What's going on, guys? Jim the Game Guru. Today's video, let's get into Majesty for the Realm, a really fun, simplistic title created by Marc Andre, the creator of Splendor. In this game, you have a kingdom, your own realm, where you have buildings in the realm and you have to recruit characters to put in each one of those buildings. When you put those characters in the buildings, you will get certain bonuses based on how many characters already reside in your realm. Super fun title, very, very simplistic. I'm actually kind of surprised because when I saw this online before I picked it up, I thought it was going to be way more complicated than Splendor because I actually thought Splendor was already a very simplistic game. But Splendor is actually a little bit more complicated in this, in the fact that with Splendor, some decisions become very hard to make as far as what cards to purchase or to reserve. And in this one, it feels easier to decide on which characters you want to recruit. So I'm going to go into the components of the game, and I'm going to go ahead and do a quick how-to play as a two-player setup. If you guys are new here, please consider subscribing or following. All right, let's take a look to see what we have on the table for Majesty. So I have this currently set up for a two-player game. Down here, we have a one scene of our entire kingdom made up of 8 cards for player 1. Up here, we have the entire realm for player 2. And I love how the artwork on the cards flow from one card to the other and complete the entire scene. In the center, we have a market deck. And what's going to happen is with this market deck, we're going to flip over characters that we could actually purchase. And those characters will be able to come into our kingdom recruited into specific buildings. So certain characters can go into certain buildings. Over here we have a worker card, which has a bunch of meeples on there for both player 1 and player 2. And on this left side over here, we have tokens, and these tokens are victory point tokens. So this is created by the same creator of Splendor, and the tokens in the game Splendor are actually phenomenal. So I guess the first question would be, when looking at these tokens, do these tokens feel as good as the ones in Splendor? And the answer is no, they do not feel as good as those. I would say these probably feel in between like a generic plastic token and the ones in Splendor. So kind of like in the middle. I was hoping they would have felt nice and heavy and solid like the Splendor ones and smooth, but not quite there. So we have 1, 2, 50, 10, and a 100 token, and then these are what you're going to use for keeping track of your victory points. In this game, there's a lot of victory point counting. I mean, a lot. It's insane. Let's go into some of the cards for the kingdom. So each kingdom is comprised of 8 cards. So we have the mill, and the mill says that for every character you have in here, this is kind of the action bonus at the very bottom, you will get 2 victory points. The brewery, we have for every character that you actually recruit in the brewery, whenever you put a new character in, for everyone you have in the brewery, you'll gain 2 victory points plus a meeple. And then you'll see this like little group kind of icon there. What that means is that everyone in the game will actually check to see if they have this condition met, and then they can actually gain bonuses as well. So when it comes to the brewery, everyone looks to see in the mill, and for every character in the mill they gain 2 extra victory points. Cottage, you gain victory points for every character you have in a mill, brewery, and in the cottage, and you'll gain 2 for those. And if you notice here on the top, it says heal top card. What that means, in this game, there's a way you can actually put characters in the infirmary, which is another building, and I'll show you the infirmary soon. Whenever characters go there, they're worth -1 points at the end of the game, and you do not gain the abilities of those character cards. The witches that you put in here in this cottage will actually allow you to pull characters from the infirmary and back into whatever building they belong to. Next, we have the guardhouse, and this is where you're going to put your guards to defend against your characters from going into the infirmary. Other players can use knights to put your character into the infirmary. Barracks, that's where your knights go. And then you'll get the bonuses down here, and it's got an attack on there. The attack means that you attack all other players and put at least one of their characters in the infirmary if they don't have the same amount of guards as you do knights. For every barkeep you have in an inn, you'll gain 4 victory points, and then for everybody in the group, for every brewery person they have in there, they'll gain 3. Castle, there's only one character that goes in the castle, and that is a queen. Once you put for every queen you have in the castle, you gain 5 victory points plus a meeple. The infirmary is where all your characters go to die. Well, actually, they go there and there would be -1 points, and you can actually pull them out and rescue them with the witch. And then we have the worker card, and this card right here is used to keep track of your meeples. You can only have 5 meeples max. Any meeples you go beyond 5 as you're taking meeples off the marketplace will end up gaining you 1 victory point per meeple, and you will actually return them to the general supply. I don't like the term worker in this game. I absolutely hate it. Anytime I see a game with meeples like this, I think of worker placement. I feel like these workers will go somewhere to invoke a specific action. Well, in this game, it's not really an action. These meeples are basically currency. They're kind of another form of currency that you can use to spend in the market to get a card of your choice. Now, what do I mean by that? So the first character in the market is going to be free. Second character will cost you 1 meeple, and you have to put 1 meeple there, right, on the very first card. Third character, you have to put a meeple here and a meeple here, and then you can actually gain the third. So the further you go in from left to right into the market, the more meeples you're going to have to spend in order to obtain the specific card you want. Now, this is not a strange mechanic. I actually like this mechanic. This is a mechanic that is in other games as well, like games like Century. Century is a very popular game. That game actually has the same type of mechanic in the marketplace where you can actually spend jewels on cards to get the card of choice. Whenever you recruit a card, it's going to go into corresponding building that it needs to go into. And then what happens is all the cards will slide down, and then you'll flip another card from the top deck down. There are 2 decks in this game. There's a number 2 deck, which is your main deck, and then there's a number 1 deck right here. So this number 1 deck, depending on the number of players, will be on top of the number 2 deck. So if you play with 4 players, you're going to have 26 of these number 1s on top of the number 2. If you're playing with 3 players, it's 14. If you're playing with 2 players only, like we have it set up here, it's only 6 of these cards. Well, the market is 6 of these cards right now. So that means all of the number 1s in this 2-player game are out, available for purchase. Now let's take a look at some of the characters here. So we have the knight. So this is a dual card, which means you can either put it in the barracks or you can put it in the inn, depending on which one you want. So if I were to put this card in the inn, it would go like this, and I would gain the points for this particular character instead of the knight. So we have knight, barkeep, we have a guard here, a queen, and we have a person for the mill. I can't remember what this character is called. We have the witch right here, which goes into the cottage. Here we have witch and guard, witch, queen, mill, knight, witch, queen, and it repeats. And then whoever the brewer is here, I'm guessing this is a brewer that goes in the brewery. I'm not sure what the name of this character is. And that's it. It's pretty limited. These are the only characters you're going to find throughout this game. This game is very, very simple. Like I said earlier in the intro, the game is super simple. You can see there's not a whole lot of characters. You can see it's very limited as far as where they can go. I do feel like this game is probably about an expansion or 2 away of being even better to add a little bit more variety. But I really like the way it plays. So let's go into some gameplay. So we're going to go ahead and start with player 1 and over here, and then player 2 is going to be up there. All right, so what is player 1 going to do as far as recruitment on their first character? So the knight attacks. So the knight will attack to actually put a character in the infirmary for other players that do not have the same number of guards as the knights. So I'm not going to go for a knight because that person does not have any characters out. So it's kind of stupid. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with let's go ahead and start off with the brewery, right? We're going to do this brewer. So I'm going to put that in there and gain what? We're going to gain 2 victory points. And then I also gain a meeple from the supply. And then you notice I'm putting the meeple on the side because it doesn't fit on my board. And that's all I can do. I can only gain 2 victory points because I only have 1 brewer character in there. These all slide down. This goes ahead and flips into there, into the market now. And now what happens at the end of my turn is this meeple goes back for a 1-point victory token. Now, player 2 is going to go. If they want, they can spend some meeples to get a knight possibly to send my character into the infirmary. So let's go ahead and do that just so we can show you how it's done. So we put 1 meeple right there because he doesn't want the first card. The first card is always free. He's going to go ahead and select the second one. It's going to go into their barracks over there, and that player will gain 3 victory points. So we'll put 3 victory points over there. And this character will go into the infirmary. How do you decide which character actually goes into the infirmary for the other player's kingdoms? And the rule is it goes from left to right. So the furthest to the left goes into the infirmary first. What I usually do is I flip this face down on the infirmary so that I know that I don't count this character as bonus points. And these all slide down now. So these all slide down. And then it's player 1's turn. So player 1's going to do the same thing. He's going to be like, okay, fine. You're going to play that way? I'll grab a knight 2. We'll go with barracks. They'll gain 3 victory points. And you can see the collection of victory points, how quick it becomes. I mean, this person already has 6 victory points, but it cascades. So the more characters you have in each of the buildings in your kingdom, the more you're gonna get every time you add a new character in there. Player 2 over there does not have any guards, so they cannot defend against the attack. Well, I'm gonna go ahead and slide these down for the market. So this flips, and then there's a guard, there's a guard. So player 2's knight is going to go over here into the infirmary. Okay, so player 2 is going to go now, and what are they going to do? I think they're going to go ahead and choose to go with this very first card, so they will get the 2 meeples that were on the card. So anytime you pick up a character that has meeples on it already, you claim those on your worker card. So this barkeep goes in there, and they will actually gain 4 victory points, just like that. And the market will slide down. Here we go, slides down. The end of that player's turn, 1 meeple goes back to the supply, and they gain another victory point for that. Player 1's gonna go now. They might spend 2 right here, 1, 2, to get a witch. So the witch is gonna go in there just like that, and that will pull the brewer that I had in there and put them back into the building that they were at. So now the cottage bonus says, for every mill and every brewer and every witch I have, I gain 2 victory points. So I have 2 characters, 1 brewer and 1 witch, and I gain 4 victory points. And then now let's go ahead and slide the market down. And then let's flip this over. Now player 2 is going to go, let's see. I mean, they could go for another knight if they want to try to get rid of some of my cards. I don't know, maybe they'll just go for the first one, and they'll just put a brewer over here. Just like that. They'll put another extra meeple over here. They gain 2 plus a meeple, I believe. So they'll gain another meeple from the supply. They'll gain 2 victory points for that. And now at the end of their turn, these 2 go back into the supply, and then they gain another 2 victory points. These all slide down, just like that. This flips. Okay. Player 1's going to go. We could go for a brewer, so we'll have a cascading. So I think they'll do that. So player 1's going to go for the brewer, stick it in there. They'll gain a meeple because that was the meeple that was on there, and they'll gain for every brewer that they have in there. They'll gain 2 victory points plus a meeple. So they'll gain 4 victory points, and they'll gain 2 meeples because 1 for every single brewer character that was on there. I know the character's not called a brewer. I can't remember what they're called, and I'll probably get called out on it, but whatever. Okay, so player 2 is going to go, and they're going to go for the defender, I think. So they'll go for the defender. They'll slap the defender there. And for every single person they have in the inn, defender, knight, and barkeep they have in the inn, they gain 2 victory points, and they will gain 4 victory points because they have a person in the inn, and they also have the guard that they just added. So these will shift down. Now, player one is going to go, and what do we got here? We've got a knight, we got a mill. I mean, they might just go for the freebie, why not? So they'll put something in the mill there, and then this meeple will go over here. The entire market shifts down. This flips over. This will go back into the general supply, and then 1 victory point comes out. And they'll gain 2 victory points for that. I believe that's the one I just put down, if I'm not mistaken. 2 victory points for putting that character in there. Now, what do you want to do when you're recruiting your characters? Is the goal to actually fill up the kingdom? I would say yes, it's better to actually fill up the kingdom as you're playing. And the reason why I'm saying that is because at the very end, there's a rule for end game scoring. The rule is that for every single building you have a character in your realm, you will take the number of buildings that you have characters times itself for victory points. So if you fill up 7 buildings, it's going to be 7 times 7. So if all 7 of your buildings have at least 1 character in there, then that building is considered a building you can use toward endgame scoring. So if you do 7, it'll be 7 times 7, it's 49 points at the end of the game. Generally, you want to shoot for having at least 1 character per building, but that's not always the case. You might have a case where you do 6 buildings and then you go for a mega bonus on one of the buildings by having a lot of characters stacked in there. That's another way you can go about it. Each and every single building will have a reward at the bottom. So if I go back to the buildings here, you'll see that there's the reward that you get there, but there's also a reward at the very bottom here. You can see the mill has 10 points there, right? That reward goes to the person that has the most characters in the mill. And every single building has that. So the brewery is 11 points for the person that has the most characters in there. Cottage is 12 points for the guardhouse is 13. Barracks is 14. 15 for the inn, and then 16 for the castle. So whoever has the most in each one of those buildings gets that reward at the bottom. Obviously, the castle is harder to get because there are less queens that come up to be able to be purchased from... I keep saying purchase because to me, it is kind of like a purchasing with the market. It's more of a recruitment, but there are less queens that you can actually recruit in the game. So let's see whose turn it is here. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I have only 4 characters over there. When does the game end? The game ends when every single player has 12 characters in their kingdom. That is when the game ends. It's not one of those things where, oh, well, something triggers and then the people in the round, whoever's left in the round, finish playing and the game is over. There's no triggering mechanism like that. It's just as soon as everyone gets 12 characters, and yes, the character in the infirmary counts as a character. As soon as they get 12 characters in their kingdom, the game is over. Okay, and then you tally up all the points. So I'm gonna do a couple more recruitments, and then I'll wrap this up because you can see how simple the game is to play. So player 2 is gonna go. So they're gonna go ahead. I think what they're gonna do is they're probably gonna get this knight. So they'll gain 3 victory points for that, just like that. And then, since the knight is an attack, I don't have any guards that match the same number of knights as they have in their barracks. So that means my furthest left character has to go into the infirmary. So that means this one goes into the infirmary. The market slides down like that. Player 1's going to go. Player 1's probably going to say, okay, I'm sick and tired of these knights in these kingdoms. So they're going to go ahead and put a guard down. So they put the guard down there, and then they'll gain what? 2 for everything in the inn, barracks, and guards. So I only have a knight and a guard, so that's 4 points. So let's go ahead and put 4 points there. We'll slide these down. So you got to be really careful with your meeples as far as what you're spending, because sometimes you'll get really aggressive. And usually what happens was whenever a queen comes up here, probably like in this spot or over here, most of the time the people that have the meeples to spend, they'll just slap it down there and go ahead and purchase the queen. It's usually a no-brainer because the queen is 5 points plus a meeple, which is just super strong. And if you get 2 of them and they cascade, we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that player's got 5 over there, so it's that person's turn. So they're gonna go ahead. I think they're gonna go ahead and spend 2 here to get another barkeep there. So the barkeep is now gonna get 4 for every barkeep, right? So it's gonna be 8
victory points for that person. And you can see the victory points, and there's gonna be a lot of trading in of victory points. You're gonna get to a point where you get these big stacks and you're gonna trade them in for higher numbered ones. So that person gets 8. And then every player, because there's that everyone token or that everyone symbol down there, gets 3 for every brewery. So this person over here gets 6 victory points. That person over there will get an additional 3. There we go. Oh, you know, and one thing I didn't do is when I put these characters here in the brewery, I was supposed to do the mill check, but no one had anything in the mills anyway, so we didn't miss out on any victory points there. So the market slides down just like that. Now this person's gonna go. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab this as a freebie, and I'm gonna put the 2 meeples here like this and go like that. Slide this down. Just like that, okay? The other player is going to go. They could do a knight, and that would be another nasty move. You know, well, actually, you know what? They got 2 knights. Yep. So they'll do the knight. So they'll get two meeples there to fill up their, almost fill up their worker. They're going to put the knight over here. They have 2 knights. This player only has 1 defender. So then this person has to lose another character to the infirmary. The knights, I kind of feel in this game, are a little OP'd only because there's not enough defenders. I feel like there's a few more knights and defenders. I really wish they would have made the number of defenders match the number of knights. I think there's a couple more knights than there are defenders. I mean, at least at first glance when I was going through the decks. The knight went in there, so since he's got 2 knights, we're going to do, they gain 6 victory points. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trade in 5 of these for a 10. And then I'm going to get 6 victory points for the knights. That's pretty much it. You can see how easy this game is to play. It is actually a really fun game. I do feel it's a little better with multiplayer instead of just 2. Instead of 2 players, having it like 3 or 4. Because this game does go up to 4 players. I feel like when you get to the 3 and 4 players, it kind of offsets certain cards like the knight characters, because if one person keeps getting the knights, it can be an advantage in a 2-player game because the other character is constantly losing characters, and then that player is going to have to constantly go for the witches in order to get their characters back. But with a 3 and the 4 player, I don't think it's as big of an impact because there's no way for the knights to actually get lopsided on one side. Kind of like this game where that player over there is getting most of the knights right now. The game looks good. It plays well. It's fun. There's a lot of victory points in it. Like, you basically will count up the victory points for who has the most characters in each of the buildings to give the bonus points for those, and count all of your chips that you have in your possession, and count the extra point bonus for the characters that you have in the certain buildings. And then whoever has the most, you add all those up, whoever has the most points wins the game. Super, super easy. I feel like this game is one of those games that you can play with anybody. Anybody. Dad, grandmother, mother, grandmother, doesn't matter, uncle, aunt. Anybody can play this game. It's so simple. I just wish that it had a few more characters. It had a little bit more variety to make it one of those games that you just endlessly play. And I think they're just an expansion or 2 away from that. But unfortunately, this game has not had an expansion ever since its release, which is a shame because I think it's actually pretty awesome. That is Majesty. That is how you play it. That is the components. If you guys are new here, please consider subscribing or following, and I will see you guys on the next video. Bye, guys.